Hey guys. All right, so we're heading up to our first quiz. We've had some very interesting readings. I'll try to cover the big ground. The quiz is very short, 10 questions. You're going to do fine as long as you've been reading. So let's look back to Brandon, and I've highlighted a few points here that I'll touch on briefly on page 3 of the article, and I've numbered it here. You'll have to number it on yours. I realize I didn't put numbers on those pages. But page 3, Brandon writes, "It was the empowered objects that were important, not the physical structure of the building or even the existence of one," right? He's been talking about the temples where the objects would be placed. "Neither temples nor shrines had to be permanent structures. Wherever a collection of the empowered objects of a deity could be brought together, and place could be found that expressed the attributes of that deity, a shrine or temple came into existence. So there were shrines in the marketplaces, at the boundaries of towns, along roads, at riversides, and in fields. That is, it was the materiality of these objects, perhaps found here, located here, an odd piece of rock, a powerful event that happens at a tree. So it's not that you write the city commissioners and ask for a church building and then try to make a place sacred through the building. This is a world in which it is the materiality and the pragmatic access to that, such that you'd have a shrine in a marketplace, for instance. Let's move from there on to, I've got this one in red because hierarchy is an issue that we're going to keep seeing in all of these traditions. And remember, the reason we're reading Brandon is that he provides us this deep and wonderful overview of the African religious roots that we are then going to be picking up in these diasporan religions. So here's part of that root. 4 levels of priests and priestesses. At the bottom of the hierarchy was the household level. So he moves through these 4 levels. And by the time Murphy is discussing Haitian voodoo, you're already seeing that there are these levels. Yes, there's an initiation that brings you first in, but then you must study and train, and then another level of initiation brings you in closer. But it is a long, slow process of moving up the hierarchy. Hierarchy and ranking were characteristic of Yoruba social life at every level. Within the temple groups, members were ranked according to their order of initiation into a particular grade. Elders were deeply respected, and their relative rank was shown by addressing them with special titles and honorific pronouns, and by obeisance and prostrations, right? And so that thinking about how strong that social hierarchy was at work, such that you would prostrate yourself, you would lie down on the ground to acknowledge an elder. Down here, I want to highlight, he writes, "The offerings of food, objects, song, money, or the blood of animals in sacrifice all revivified the ashe of the Orisha and directed it towards specific ends." So ashe, this all-encompassing creative energy, which is central to understanding Yoruba cosmology. You're going to start with ashe. In ceremonial spirit possession, the link between the Orisha and its descendants became palpable, as in ceremonies held in its honor, the immaterial being came down from on high and took over the body of one of its children, communicating to the assembly in a visible, physical, human form. So here we are at that nexus where the body becomes that place through which the spirits, so clearly the spirits need the body in order to be present, because we want to see physical, human, material demonstrations of that divinity. When I say we, I mean the human being, and we're thinking comparatively across time and culture, right? So this is the last piece I want to look at. Their ability to carry out rituals gives humans an awesome responsibility because it is unique. Only humans can carry out ritual on behalf of all other beings. Only humans can sacrifice and empower objects with Ashe. It is only humans, then, who have the ability to create and sustain the harmony, freshness, and balance that ought to exist in the universe. So there's a depiction of how the value of human personhood in the Yoruba cosmos. So sure, you've got your Oludumare, the creator god, and then you've got your Orishas, and then you've got your spirits, and then you've got your humans, and then the things that are under the ground. But the human actually is this powerful little nexus that has the capacity to restore, refresh the Ashe through their work. Okay, this stuff ought to be starting to sound an awful lot like Murphy describing the liturgy, the work, and the service of the people in voodoo. I do want to save that. And there. Now, Murphy. If you start on page 6 with Murphy, he writes, I believe that what is distinctive about the spirituality of the religions of the African diaspora, and now let's remember, he's wanting to take this hemispheric perspective and looking across the Caribbean through to South America, bringing in the Black church so that we wouldn't be so American-centric, but actually rather by taking this hemispheric, thinking Central, South America, the Caribbean, as having deep connection, right? Then we're going to be able to look at the Black church in America much differently, because now we are going to have that tension between a common diasporan emphasis on the spirit, on social justice, with the uniqueness, because of course by the time it's made it to the southern United States, it is a different thing than it is in Jamaica, right? And so I've talked about that tension between the specificity and the commonality. I believe what is distinctive about the spirituality of the religions of the African diaspora can be found in the way that the relationship between human beings and spirit is worked out in community ceremony. Now, what I just read from Brandon about the human as that place where this working out gets done, here we have Murphy echoing that same perspective on what is the work that humans are doing and how does it relate them to the spirits. Now, Murphy discusses spirit on page 2. He then moves through his methodology in terms of working from the outside to the inside, working from the social context into the experience of the subjectivity. And then he returns on page 8 to rediscuss what this spirit thing is again. So don't underestimate the power of what he has packed into these 9 pages. I want you to get a handle on it. So if we look at page 2, he says, I'm interested in the way in which each tradition constructs and develops a code of relationships between human beings and spirit, however this word may be defined. These activities toward the spirit are the tradition's spirituality. Each tradition shows these relationships, enacts its spirituality in community activity, that is, in ceremony. Each diasporan community celebrates the spirit in ceremonies and shows in various ways through the arrangement of symbolic objects and actions. Remember those objects that Brandon was talking about? The arrangements of these objects actually help create the connection. A spirituality of interdependence between the community and the spirit. Now, he tells us that each tradition shows the relationships and acts its spirituality in ceremony. What he does not say is, that's when I bring out my spiritometer and I start weighing how much and how real are these spirits. It's not what he can do. It's not what I can do. It's not what a university based on the humanities can do. What we can do is look at the work accomplished in the ceremonies. Look at what work is being performed. We can tell you, he tells us about what that work is. We can tell you how the community responds to that work. So, at the bottom of page 2, by using the singular noun spirit, I only wish to indicate at this point that the participant's description of their own behavior is accurate. He's not there to tell them, oh man, you got this so wrong. This is nothing but a case of father envy or something like that. He's going to say their description of their own behavior is accurate, that the spirit is a real and irreducible force uplifting communities throughout the African diaspora. So his evidence for this real and irreducible force is watching the work that is accomplished in the community throughout the African diaspora. So we can go from Jamaica, we can go to Haiti, we can go to Brazil, and we can look at the work being accomplished. That's what we can study here. And let me just see one final note here about spirit. The phrase spirit, he says on page 8, is useful in bridging the gap of theological explanation among the different traditions, right? And when it comes to Protestant Black Baptists in the South and the Loa, the spirits of Haiti, right? There's a very good chance that these people would want to argue very pointedly that they're not talking about the same spirit. That's part of the politics of this, right? And Murphy's not trying to blend this and say it's all the same spirit. Rather, I mean it to be evocative of connections rather than evasive of differences. The spirit can refer to these different things. The suggestion of invisibility and power, of motion and action, leads us to look at human activities. That's what we can look at, human activities, which express these qualities of the spirit. The biblical tradition seems to deliberately trying to de-objectify the idea of spirit when it calls it pneuma, the breath, wind. It's a non-anthropomorphic force, like wind. Just think wind blowing through, wind playing you as though you were a flute. It de-objectifies, de-anthropomorphizes the idea of spirit to thwart reasoning about it and to promote direct interactions between the devotee and the spirit. The living spirit cannot be shown except in activity, and this activity makes it present in the ceremony to be experienced and shared by all in the spirit. So, like good anthropologists, we are capable of reading his descriptions of, through the ceremony, this process of a community that works the spirit. I hope that's been helpful, and best of luck on the quiz. It's a simple little quiz. Get your Brandon down, get your intro to Murphy down, and at least be aware of the vocabulary in the first part of Murphy reading. Good night.